into the Royal Experience with Fireball. I am so excited to have you all here with me today. It is amazing to see you tuning in and about all the local heroes and the ways to stop abuse. The word for today is fearless. Our word today was brought to us by the Royal Hearts Foundation, the I Am Collection. At the Heart Center, the word fearless is used to represent the nature of the lion's ability to go in search of food amongst those bigger, stronger, faster than he and still come out victorious. Fearless is defined as free from fear, brave. Brave is defined as the ability to act regardless of fear or obstacle. So what then is fear? Fear is an unpleasant but strong emotion caused by anticipated danger. So fearless then is the ability to act in spite anticipated danger, just like the lion, the declared king of the jungle. Survivors of abuse are fearless. Current victims of human trafficking are fearless. Each day they get up to work not knowing if they will survive the next few hours. Survivors of human trafficking are fearless. In spite the danger of threat, they reach out for help. So today, think about the various things you will do throughout your day that will require fearlessness. Feel free to send me what you did or your experience with being fearless today to thatgirlfireball@gmail.com. You're also welcome to send questions, make comments, come to our live audience, and be a part of helping our community by learning and doing it the Royal way, where we don't just say it, we slay it. Take a deep breath while we take a break and hear from our sponsors.
Speaking out about her horrific experience, her mission now is to help others, and has more on how she's turning her pain into passion.
We've seen them come in with black eyes, broken jaws.
Sherri Lochridge is the human trafficking team leader at Covenant House.
We have clients that come in and they're barricading themselves in the room because they're afraid somebody's going to come in and harm them, or they may not be able to.
Right now, she's working with 32 women and men who are survivors of human trafficking.
They go through an enormous amount of trauma, and by the time they get to us, we're trying to pick up the pieces. We're trying to meet them where they're at, and we're trying to help them recover.
Her path to recovery also came through the Covenant House.
Covenant House was my way out. So Covenant House found me in an abandoned parking garage, and Covenant House was my way out. I came here, I went to college, I got a job, and this has been my passion ever since.
20 years ago, she's doing for other survivors now.
They're the true heroes, because it's really hard and really brave for them to come out of that story.
Welcome back. Today we have Sherri Lochridge. Sherri is an amazing example of someone who is fearless. She is a survivor. She is an advocate for those who have endured sexual violence and the breakdown in our justice system. She's also an example of a person who's persevered through human trafficking. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
I am wonderful. All right. Can you tell us about your personal experience with human trafficking?
Right. So I grew up in a very violent home.
Okay.
Where I watched my mother beaten until she went into seizures. My sister and I sexualized. My siblings beaten. Really very violent home with I thought I'd never escape. You know, one day I went to school. I was covered in bruises, and finally somebody saw. And I got placed in foster care, but that was not an easier feat for me. That was a lot of relocating from one group home to another foster home. So when I turned 13, I said, oh, I can do this on my own, right? And I start running away, thinking I have all the answers, but trying to avoid being victimized or traumatized by one more person. So I'd run away, they'd pick me up, I'd run away, they'd pick me up, and this went on for several years, just a cycle. And I found myself meeting a guy by the time I was late 16, early 17, that said, you come with me, you're never going to have to go back there, the police won't find you. Um, and I said, oh, that sounds like a great idea. I could just get a job and start my life because I feel like an adult. I have all the answers. But where I found myself was out on Airline Highway in a motel. And I think it was 30 minutes before the first customer came in. And I remember my skin crawling because I had already been through so much abuse. And afterwards, I just vomited for what seemed forever. And I thought, oh my God, I can't do this. And this isn't what I signed up for. And this is not going to be my destiny. This is not what I'm trying to escape this, not run to it. But telling that person that I was leaving did not end well for me. I got punched in the face. My nose is crooked to this day. It reminds me where I come from. It took several weeks for me to be able to convince that person to let me go to the store. Because that's the piece to traffic in. They have total control over you. You don't even have permission to walk to the store. But when I was able to gain that trust and use my own street sense, I hopped right on that Airline Highway bus. But I did not have a mom and dad I could call. I wasn't calling the police. I didn't have, this network of support families to call and rescue me. So I still wound up on Rampart Street in an abandoned parking garage where I lived with a handful of other homeless kids at that time. And there was no running water, no electricity, didn't know when you were going to take a bath, when you were going to eat next, where you were going to use the bathroom, simple stuff. And I still had to survive and still had to do things to survive. And I remember the French Quarter being a huge part during that time in my life, and strip clubs trying to recruit me into them, those sort of things. And I watched the kids that were living in that building with me be forced to sell sex, both female and male, and do what they needed to survive, to eat, to just be able to meet basic needs. And it took an outreach worker coming down there one day. We're on Rampart Street. We're blocks away from a youth homeless shelter. Had no idea because we were so involved in the streets. And I remember them handing out bag lunches and trying to convince me, what can I do for you? Come back with me. And I thought, oh, no way. No way I'm going back with you, because I'm not going to go to another institution. I'm not going to go to another facility where people just don't care, But that actually turned out to not be the case. It became the first place I stopped running. I walked into Covenant House doors, and it felt so good to be able to take a shower and get a hot meal, basic things that people forget about, brush your hair. I still remember that feeling, but I also remember all of these staff there that just kind of threw their arms around you, and you were no longer, it was family, it was home. And they helped me get on my feet. I was able to go back to school. I missed a lot of school during that time. I was able to start college, and I was working 2 jobs finally as a waitress and really like pounding the pavement. And it was because finally you had not one, but a number of people saying you're worthy, you have value, you matter. And it just, I always knew in my heart, we joke, we have staff that work there today that actually were there when I lived there.
Really?
Right. Right. And one of them I consider like a mother to me. But we always joke because I used to say when I lived there, I'm coming back here and I'm going to change some lives. I'm going to show the love that you guys showed me. And I did. I wound up going back about 10 years ago, and it has been a journey ever since.
So tell us what you do.
I lead the human trafficking department at Covenant House, and we have since 2015 served over 300 victims and survivors of human trafficking. People don't realize how prevalent it is in this city, but it is prevalent. And not just among females, but among males as well. And they're probably one of the more underserved populations because they're less likely to report. But we're not only providing the direct care, but we're actually out there on the strips where they're forced to work, and we're talking with them, and we're trying to provide and show them that there are resources out there, and when they're ready, they can come with us. We work alongside law enforcement so that when they have stings versus being criminalized, we recognize them as the victims they are, and they're able to come and enter our facility or go to a different safe house or be reunited with family that may not have seen them in years. So we go into the strip clubs to make sure that the people working in those clubs are of age, right? And have the choice, and they've made that choice to be in those clubs. Yeah.
I mean, just to go back, you know, at the Covenant House, you are the lead case manager for the Human Trafficking Division. And you started out as a volunteer, right? How long did you volunteer before you knew that this position was for you?
You know, right when I walked back in the doors, I said, okay, I volunteer a few hours a week, but I found myself volunteering 5 days a week.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I said, you know, so they were like, well, you might want to get paid for this. So it wasn't very long, a few months before I was hired.
Really?
Right. Because, yeah, the connection was there. And, you know, I think it was very relatable to the kids. Oh, wow, you're a former resident? Really? You know, that gives people hope. Well, she can do that, then I can do, you know.
So right now, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll hear a little bit from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with some more from Sherri Lochridge. Welcome back to the Royal Experience with Fireball. All right, so before the break, we were talking about Sherri and her personal experience, as well as what led her to do the work that she's doing now. But we're going to back up a little bit, and we're going to talk about what is human trafficking. You know, and I don't want to go into the whole technical because people probably won't care about that anyway. But the idea is that you are making money with your body and your service for someone else, and you don't have the control. And that could be whether or not you're coerced, whether or not you're in fear. It could be for various reasons, but the biggest part is you're not in control, but you're forced to work without pay. And that is human trafficking, whether it's sexual or labor. They all are within the idea of trafficking. Do you want to add to that, Sherri? Because I'm sure you...
No, that's a perfect definition.
You know, I mean, because I think what happens is people look at so many different things of what they see and what they hear on TV as what human trafficking looks like. And it looks like that, but it looks a lot like other things too. You know, it looks like the prostitute that is on the corner. It looks like a child in the hotel. It looks like internet services of children under duress or dressing for adults, or it looks like kids in a house of people in another country or in this country who are not theirs. And it may look like these are their children, but they could just be there for labor or for sex, but being made to look like a family. And then there's labor trafficking. One of the things that I learned with Leanne in the human trafficking task force when they were teaching us on how to be teachers and leaders in human trafficking. I got a chance to meet a lady who worked at the Crawfish Farm, right? And one of the things is like, we don't think that here in New Orleans, people are in labor trafficking. And she talked about so many of them who come into this country thinking they're coming to work to get, freedom and to send for their families, and they're making this money to be able, and they never see $1 of it. And they work in these crawfish farms right here. The stuff we love, that crawfish that is packaged, prepackaged for you where you don't have to do it, is being done by someone who possibly is forced to do it without pay. That was heartbreaking to me. That was very, very heartbreaking. Is there anything you want us to know about your work in human trafficking as it relates to, how people come in? So when a teenager comes in and they're identified as a person, are they immediately identified, or is there a type of intake process?
So as the clients come in, as the victims come in, sometimes they're presented by law enforcement, but the majority of the time it's word of mouth from people
really?
we have already provided services to. And so sometimes they'll come right out and say, this is what has just happened to me. But many times you're having to build that rapport and trust before they're comfortable. You have to remember, it's like any other violent crime where there's some shame to it. They blame themselves, or they hold guilt, and they're so afraid you're going to judge them, and they don't. Some of them don't even see themselves as a victim yet. So I've had clients be in the facility for 9 months to a year, and they're like, "By the way, Miss Sherri, can I talk to you now?" So, right, because, and I can relate to that feeling. When I first started sharing my own experience, I would like, but that's not who I am, and I don't want people to know me for that. I want them to know me for the work I do. And it took me a while to realize that experience is part of the work I do. And it's the same thing with them. They see this as their fault. And so some come in like, I really need the help. This is what has occurred. I'm fleeing my pimp. I'm fleeing, my family, because families traffic kids too. And then others take a little bit more time to be able to come in and ask for that help and tell you what's really going on.
I remember one time we did something together, an event. And you shared about an experience where when kids try to get free, that sometimes the in and out, like them being able to like go to work, has been dangerous, when they first are coming. Like, is there a suggested time that they should wait from coming in to go and get a job even?
Right. So the employment, from the moment they walk through the door, employment is not your priority. Mental health is. Mental health and healing is, because you have to remember that they're in survival mode, fight or flight, right? And that doesn't end just because they came through our doors, right? So they have to be able to overcome some of the things that they're playing in their head over and over and over again. And because I've seen like some of the worst, from broken jaws to eye sockets being blacked out, to almost recently someone slashed across their face. Employment definitely is not really something we need to worry about. We need to worry about getting that person well, whether it be physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, right? And that can take a long time. I've had kids barricade their room doors with furniture because a month later they're still afraid that pimp's going to show up. So we want to take care of them as a being, as a whole. And all of that education, employment come later, right? Because we get time to work with them, because we know ahead of time that this is not something you recover from overnight. This takes years. I'm 46 years old. It is almost 20 something years later that what happened to me, but you can't be a man and walk up behind me to this day, right? So that trauma lives within us forever, right? We just learn
how to cope
coping
with
skills.
it. Correct. Oh my God. Like, this is a lot, because one of the things is that you see human trafficking, you hear about it, and it's Hollywood. It's totally Hollywood. But to see and have to experience, people slashed across the face and the amount of fear they have to be feeling. I remember when I came to your office and we were talking about, just therapeutic care when they first come in, you said, even if I have to sleep in the auditorium with them, I'll do that. Even, because one of the things, you don't turn anybody away.
No, right. We're open and safe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how old you are, who you are. You can come in and we're going to figure it out.
Wow. And so just them coming in and you spending a night with them, I'm sure that has to change sometimes.
Depends. I've spent weeks with some of them, because they, some come in, they're terrified. They're really truly terrified for their life and their safety, and but they're also used to being told what to do and when to do and how to do it. So it's new territory for them, right? And so I've had victims come in and follow me around, even up to the bathroom door when I'm going to use the bathroom, and have to say, okay, be right back. And I've had to spend up to weeks at the facility with them to make them feel safe. Again, all that starts to change and balance out a little bit when they know, okay, we trust these people. Okay, they're not just talking. I'm being able to be shown that they're not going anywhere. They're not going to abandon me, and they have my best interest in mind. All that comes with trust, and that's why it's so important when you're doing direct care. Follow through with what you say. Don't make false promises. When I tell the girls or the boys, call me in the middle of the night, I don't care, call me anytime. They do, and I always pick up the phone, because the first time I don't, I've broken their trust.
Wow. Ooh. When I literally say a real life hero, I mean that, because sometimes, we're looking for capes and we're looking for this drastic measure of what it looks like. But to honestly pick up a phone at 12 and make that declaration and still be in the game 10 years, that's big, because just that one night you're tired, and they call and you don't pick up,
Yeah, and then that would be probably the time that somebody's really,
in real danger.
And their emergency is not necessarily a true emergency, but it is to them. I've had kids call me at 1 a.m. Can you help me fill out my food stamp application? But that is their emergency in that minute, right? And so, but I've also had other kids say, meet me by the casino and come get me, because I'm fleeing my pimp. So
Wow. Now, do you have a team that does that, or do you go?
I always go, because I always want to be there when they initially come in, just so they have somebody that they could kind of relate to. But I have an entire team. We have 6 case managers. I have a social worker that's dedicated just to those victims and survivors of trafficking, that they get all their wellness and counseling through. So, and I have a great team. We've been able to reunite some of these kids with family that hasn't seen them in years in the middle of the night when we're driving to Shreveport, because I'm not staying in New Orleans. Get me out of here. And we're taking that 6-hour drive.
Oh, wow.
So I wouldn't be able to do any of this without my team.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Oh, wow. This is an amazing interview. This is amazing work that you do, because you're actually on the ground working and getting people to safety. And not only do you do that, but you go around educating. You educate people on human trafficking. One of the things I think is the biggest thing I remember when we went to CAR, and there were kids screaming, "Oh, that wouldn't happen to me," and he was like, "Oh yeah." And it was amazing, because it was like, yep, I had a girl who said that to me before, and then I read about her, and it was wow. So the thing about it is, human trafficking can happen to anyone at any time.
Anyway, let me tell you, I've had as young as 13, 12, and as old as 54.
Wow.
Understand this.
54 for a first timer?
Yes.
Wow.
Understand this. They seek out vulnerabilities. We all have vulnerabilities. I don't care who you are, right? And the moment they understand what yours is, they are con artists. They know how to groom you and make you feel safe and make you feel loved, make you feel they're your friend, right? And if a 54-year-old could fall for it, why wouldn't you, right? Most pimps now present, with the recruiters, right? They use their recruiters. Recruiters are generally females. Why, as a female, wouldn't I trust a female? Right? And then I'm going to introduce you to this guy because I really think that you and him, y'all will hit it off. And now he's saying he's your boyfriend. But he's not your boyfriend because he knows what he's about to do to you in a few weeks. But he's starting off. He's going to pay for your nails to get done. Let me buy you some cute outfits. I love you. He's love bombing you, right? Because he knows that's what you need because that's your vulnerability. I'm going to get your hair done. I'm going to take you out to these restaurants. And in 2 or 3 weeks, I got to make sure I curb my language, but I'm trying to keep it real because...
Oh, you can. This is a podcast.
Okay. But next thing you know, no, you're not my girlfriend. You're my bitch. You are going to make me my money. And if you don't, I'm going to fucking kill you. And let me show you, I'm serious, and I'm going to beat the hell out of you right now so that you know I'm in total control. And that friend of yours that introduced you to that guy, she's the bottom. So now she's going to watch you for that pimp and make sure you act accordingly. And every little side step you take, she's going to report it back to that pimp and you're going to be punished. Till finally you break and you say to yourself, well, this ain't so bad after all. And you acclimate to your environment, right? And you're in survival mode now.
It's come to that point. We need to take a break and we'll be right back with the Royal Experience.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Petey Paul, and I'm here to introduce to you my new network called the What It Do Network. If you ever thought about wanting to have your own platform, you want your own podcast, to have a larger voice, a place to where you can interview people, you can talk about issues, you can promote your own company, you can promote your hobby, you can promote whatever it is you want to do, such as I. The equipment is here. The space is here. The engineer is here. Everything you need to create that network of business that you want to draw in to you. The What It Do Network is for everyone. It don't matter if you're 95, 75, 55, 35, 25, or 5. It don't matter. You want a platform to where you have a larger voice, you're being heard throughout the city, even nationwide. If it matters to you, this is the place for you. The What It Do Network. Come see me.
Welcome back to the Royal Experience with Fireball. And we've been hearing from Sherri Lochridge of the Covenant House. She is the lead case manager for the human trafficking division there at the Covenant House. And she's been sharing with us her experiences with working with people who have been trafficked and what it's like when you come in. And just how easy it is to fall victim of human trafficking, because I think some of the misconceptions are I'm too this or I'm too that to fall victim. And as I was sharing in the break is that even me, just now as we get booked in, me being Fireball, who is to say that a person who is recruiting me is not to come and do a gig, right?
Right.
Is not the other end of that not a trafficker? I don't know, right? So we have to learn to take some provisions, some preventative measures to do the best we can. But before we do that, what are some things, what are some signs that this could be a possible human trafficking situation? Because, I remember when we were in the human trafficking training and they were talking about how people, when they learn about human trafficking, they're looking like they're vigilant, like they're looking and they're ready to call and they're following people. Oh, I think this is a traffic house, and they're calling and calling and calling. Right. And so what is it if I was just a concerned citizen, right? What would be some signs that possibly this is human trafficking?
Right, because it can be very hard to distinguish. It could be a number of things, but some of the more consistent things that traffickers do is they remove all documents, right, from a person. No ID, no social security card, no birth certificate. It's in their possession. Traffickers like to speak for the victim. So if you're in the company of two people and one is dominating that conversation, even though you're directing it towards the other person, that's a sign that something is going wrong. Obviously physical, like bruising, malnutrition, because those are all forms of punishment a trafficker would use, removing food, preventing them from being able to eat, hydrate. A lot of people don't realize this. Substance abuse is a huge part. We write off people, oh, that's just another drug addict. But traffickers use drugs to control, to keep their victims up so they can make their quotas, right? So the next time you're passing judgment on that person that appears to be super high, they actually could be a victim of human trafficking. Obviously a male with several females and they're all kind of following his lead versus, being of their own free will choice. Those sort of things, those are all red flags. Victims sometimes are moved around so much that they don't even know what city or state they're in. We've had them ask that. So there are multiple signs, and it can be hard to distinguish because they also could justify other reasons like domestic violence or just, a normal substance abuse issue or concern. It's paying attention, though, I think, to body language and the amount of control one individual has over the other or over a group of people. And to me, you can't go wrong reporting. As far as, because if you think it's possible, then go with your instinct and report it. Because better you be wrong than you have been right and not said anything. Right? Correct. And so we always say, see something, say something. And so you can't go wrong by just following that instinct.
And that's one thing is just one is reporting. Should a person follow a suspected trafficker?
Absolutely not. No. First of all, let me tell you something. You're forgetting there's a victim involved here. Walking up to that victim, are you okay, while the trafficker's standing there? Actually, she'll get punished or he'll get punished later on, right? And so you don't want to engage with the victim either, but you definitely don't want to follow a trafficker. They're known for their violence, but also, like, you're not the police, and the idea is to remove that person from an unsafe situation. So it should be the people that are trained in safety that do that. You don't want to cause harm to yourself, but definitely not to that victim.
And I'm glad you said that, because that was going to be my next question is, should you try to rescue a person who is being trafficked or who you suspect is being trafficked?
No. When we go do our street outreach, right, I'm not hopping out of the vehicle and engaging with them immediately. I'm circling like the blocks on Shefflin Tour Highway 4 or 5 times, watching the girl. I'm watching all areas of the block that way, block that way. I want to make sure there's not a male standing around or a few males standing around, because one of those might be her pimp. I don't want them seeing me talking to that person working, right? Maybe they're working on their own accord, but I don't want to be the one that gets them violently beaten later that night because why were you talking to that lady? right? And so you have to be very conscious of that. And so an approach in them should be, to me, by trained advocates and that understand that safety environment that you have to utilize, because these girls are the ones that will ultimately get punished for your bad choice.
Wow. Okay. So that's amazing, and thank you for giving those tips and dispelling some of these misconceptions. One of the biggest things that I've heard is, are the most ignorant. Let me say that the most ignorant things that everybody wants to do what they're doing, and they have a choice. They could just leave if they didn't want to do that. And when I hear that, I just want to choke people, because it's like, you know I feel that when people are judgmental, right, and they have an opinion about something that they have not experienced themselves, that's already ignorant. But the idea that they also have a negative connotation about the person who is experiencing that is then heartbreaking.
Right.
Right.
So you're right. Ignorant is. I would have said something, but you're right, because let me tell you, and not all traffickers are violent. A lot of this is mind control, right?
Correct.
It's mind control, and it is so easy to say you'll do this and do that. You would do this. You should have did this, but you're not in that moment, and you don't know what it's like, and you don't know what it's like to know only one thing, and that one thing can be as chaotic as all of society thinks it is, but it's your chaos and it's what makes you feel safe. So leaving that and going to what they say is normal can be a pretty scary thing. So no, the judgment, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I hear all the time, and I'm like, no, she ain't nothing but nah. Don't you? I correct people all the time about what they say about prostitutes, because when I look at people now, since I've been in this field, is I don't see prostitutes anymore. I can't see them because I don't know if who that is there because they want to be.
Right.
I don't know anymore. You can't tell and just be like, oh, well, that one, she looked like she want to be here. That one looked like she's been, like you don't know anymore. And so that is the heartbreaking part of it, right? And so because of that, now I just look at everybody as a potential victim.
And let me say, pretty much everybody is a potential victim. You don't have to have a trafficker to be a victim.
Correct.
The majority of little girls don't wake up and say, I want to be a prostitute. Trauma.
Something happened.
Childhood trauma. Something led them there. And it's not for us to judge that. Because to me, I always say circumstance, right, can look a lot like trafficking as well.
Correct.
Gotta be kind to people.
Correct. You definitely do. All right. So if, who should we call if we see a potential victim or we see a potential situation of human trafficking? What can we do?
If there's an immediate danger, obviously 911. However, if it's a suspicion you have, you're unsure of, you can always call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And they have a wonderful network where they are able to triage things, reach out to people like myself and my team to kind of go and see what's going on, try and make contact with that person. If they feel that it's a 911, they'll also call 911. If you're a victim and trying to get out of the situation, they are the best person to call if there's not an immediate danger. If you're looking for resources, where can I go? How can I get there? That is the best number to call, the National Human Trafficking Hotline.
Okay, awesome. All right. And so, you guys have heard it here. It is not best to go and approach any situation. We're not asking anyone to be superheroes to the extent where you're going in with the cape to pull people out. That is not what we're asking. And in fact, we advise you not to. What we do is we advise you to call the National Hotline for Human Trafficking and get some advice. And one of the things that, is always helpful in any criminal situation is details. What did you see? When did you see it? And how did you, what color? What does it look like? What is an address? What is the license plate? Like things like that, being detailed. Even if you're not sure, just being able to have the ability to report what you actually saw is the best thing you can do. And that's it. We appreciate you. And I appreciate Sherri for coming. But as we close the show, we always like to take a few minutes to reflect and release. Today we discussed the state of child abuse, and we discussed, the effects of it here in the city of New Orleans, as well as surrounding areas. And the Royal Hearts Foundation of America, we're here to help you and to ensure that you are supported and that you are loved and that you are finding the resources that you need. And so for those of you who are affected by the abuse of any kind, whether it's human trafficking, sexual abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence, physical abuse, these acts of violence are serious and they are very, very tough topics. They may stir up negative and painful emotions. So I want you to take a few minutes to take all of those emotions and ball them up in an internal balloon. I want you to close your eyes and take a nice, long, deep breath and just blow it all out. Blow out all of the negativity, blow out all of the unpositive emotions, the negative emotions. And we're going to do that one more time. We're going to take all of those negative emotions and suck it up and blow it out. I want to thank you again for joining me today on the Royal Experience. Please feel free to send me any questions or comments to the Royal Experience. And you can also send it to thatgirlfireball@gmail.com. Thank you for joining me.